Good afternoon. Everybody ready? Everybody made it out of the rain? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Just 4 days into my time here as the Fairfax County Police Department, I was on my first homicide scene not too far from headquarters in Chantilly. And a man who I later came to be aware was 26-year-old Brian Costanza Campos, was shot and killed, and his body was in the middle of a parking lot in a shopping center. And I thought then that this was certainly something that the community would rightly so want answers. His family needs answers. So the investigation that's been going on has been complex. It's been nonstop. It's involved the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, the Herndon Police Department, Major Ed O'Carroll, who will speak after me, and he will give you details about the case. Will even tell you that this particular homicide investigation took our detectives out of state. Our crime analysts, and our crime analysts always do, particularly in this day and age, did a tremendous amount of work to help bring closure to this case. Our victim services specialist in this case has been in nonstop contact with our victim's family. So 26-year-old Brian Campos, no criminal history, hardworking man, was shot several times and killed in the middle of the night in a parking lot and left for dead. So just this morning we filed criminal charges against Wilson Navarro Escobar, 29 years old, Rigoberto Rodriguez Hernandez, 43 years old. They were both charged with second-degree murder and other offenses that Major O'Carroll will go into. So far this year, we're halfway through the year. It's July 1st. We've had 10 homicides in Fairfax County. That's an increase from where we were last year. That doesn't sit well with us. It doesn't sit well with our community. These cases will continue to receive the highest priority of investigative and patrol and leadership attention from the Fairfax County Police Department. It's not acceptable to take a life in Fairfax County or anywhere else for that matter. And we're proud to announce this morning that at least 2 killers have been taken off the streets and charged with these crimes. And our continued prayers and thoughts go with the family, the Campos family, for this tragic loss of their 26-year-old loved one. So I'll turn it over to Major O'Carroll, and then we'll stand ready to take questions afterwards.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. As the Chief said, I'm Major Ed O'Carroll, Bureau Chief for the Major Crimes, Cyber, and Forensics team here at Fairfax County Police Department. I want to echo the Chief's sincere expression of sympathy to Brian Campos's family and friends who continue to grieve his death. Prior to updating the community on this tragic case, I too also want to commend our victim service specialists. They do great work to comfort the family members that are left behind to deal with such tragedy. And to the Campos family, we remain at your side together. Now, we will see this case to court for final conclusion. And to our community, we do work every single day to combat violence and acts of violence such as this case represents, the one that took Brian's life. As we have previously shared, detectives have determined that Mr. Brian Costanza Campos was fatally shot in the early morning hours of May 7th in the 4300 block of Chantilly Shopping Center, located out in Chantilly, Virginia. Just hours ago, our detectives secured criminal arrest warrants for second-degree murder and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony against the 2 men responsible for this murder. As the Chief mentioned, charged are 43-year-old Rigoberto Rodriguez Hernandez of Sterling and 29-year-old Wilson Navarro Escobar, also of Sterling. While this is an important step towards justice for Mr. Campos's death, the case remains very active. We have a lot of work yet to do, but this is what we know so far. We were called to the shopping center in the early morning hours of May 7th for a subject that was lying in the parking lot just off the roadway. Patrol quickly responded, determined that it was likely a homicide, and members of the Detective Bureau were called to the scene. Our team went to work. 6 days later, on May 13th, Rigoberto Rodriguez Hernandez was arrested for a separate shooting that occurred that same day in the same vicinity, but several hours prior to the murder. We believe that first shooting occurred around 1 a.m. Hernandez was charged with malicious wounding and discharging a firearm in a public place and brandishing a firearm relevant to that 1 a.m. event. Since that time, on May 13th, he has been held at the Adult Detention Center with those charges. So today, we arrest that same offender and announce second-degree murder warrants and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, in addition to his original charges. Now, those same charges, as I mentioned, was served on Wilson Navarro Escobar, who was already in custody at the Loudoun County Adult Detention Center. The day after the murder, on May 8th, deputies from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office arrested Escobar on unrelated charges, and they found him in possession of a firearm. I'm thankful for the partnership with the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. They called us immediately and notified us of their arrest and that a weapon was recovered. That does remain in evidence. Now, that firearm, in addition to another firearm that we have in our possession, will be forensically examined to determine if it was used in the May 7th murder. Now, detectives have identified a connection between the two offenders and our victim, Brian. We do believe the two men charged were involved in an earlier dispute with Mr. Campos. This case illustrates several undisputable facts. Crime knows no boundaries, nor does justice. As the chief mentioned, detectives work with a multitude of agencies from the Northern Virginia area and even went to West Virginia to follow up on critical leads that were involved in this case. This case is technical, requires hours of processing digital evidence, electronic evidence, and physical evidence. And I want to thank our detectives from the cyber and forensics team and our lead detective on the case, all making a difference for justice. We have great staff, and we strive for excellence and justice in every single case. As I mentioned earlier, the case, although these arrests today bring a sense of relief that the killers are off the street, our work is not done. If you have any information relevant to either one of those shootings on May 7th, in the early morning hours in the shopping center, as the chief mentioned, not far from here, actually very close proximity to our Criminal Justice Academy. If you have any information, you saw something, you heard something, contact the Fairfax County Police Department. We can be reached at 703-246-7800. You can contact Fairfax County Crime Solvers and provide information. You can remain anonymous. Thank you. I'll take any questions you may have. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier dispute. Was that an earlier dispute that night, days before, weeks before?
Yeah, so I don't know how long that the dispute had been going on, but what we do know is all three parties, our victim, the two killers in this case, knew each other. They were aware of each other, and there was some dispute between the three.
At this point, do you know if there were somewhere that night together in that shopping center, or you can't offer any details?
Oh, I can offer a detail. They were in the shopping center, and these two killers gunned down a community member, and today they're in jail where they need to be. So they were all three in that shopping center.
Visiting a specific business, or?
Yeah, I'm not going to mention what business what we think they might have been at even earlier, But we've got a lot of evidence that shows what happened prior to the murder and what happened after, and probable cause and a solid case. This case has gone on for weeks, and justice prevailed today. Any other questions?
What was the nature of the May 8th arrest? What was he charged with, Fernando?
The May 8th arrest in the charge here in Fairfax County, or was that the Loudoun County charge?
Hernandez was in your custody, Fairfax custody. Yes, that arrest.
Yeah, so what's interesting, that's why I tried to go through line by line and explain the work that we did early on gave us clarity to the first shooting that occurred at 1 a.m. We know that there was a weapons discharge at 1. Mr. Campos was not killed at 1 a.m. We believe he was killed hours after that incident. So, we had probable cause, sufficient evidence, a lot of evidence to make that early charge on what happened after midnight. What we were able to do, again, with the second arrest that Loudoun County had, which was unrelated, but actually what we find out now, or what the detectives have found out, that this is all related. And laying it out, there's a clean timeline to exactly what occurred, which gave us the probable cause to what led us to today with those additional charges. And again, we think we have the 2 weapons in custody. We'll know that when a lot of this forensics continues to come back.
Where was that gun discharged?
The earlier case?
At 1 a.m.?
Same place.
Oh,
Yep.
the park.
Yep. There was a question here. I answered it. Okay, good. Any other questions for either myself or the chief?
So that day, my understanding is that this happened around 5 or 6. When the media got there around 10:30, 11 a.m., Brian's body, Mr. Campos' body, was still there. Is that normal procedure, that the body was still uncovered, or?
Yeah, so one of the things we strive to do is give the best justice to Brian Campos. Collect the best evidence to find his killer or killers. So we do balance what the community sees, which in Fairfax County isn't likely a murder scene. As the chief mentioned, we have too many murders this year. We have 10 too many. So we're always balancing the privacy of the passing public, and do try to shield our community from seeing that, because it's tragic. It's tragic for our first responders. It could be tragic for the community. So we always work on best shielding the community so they don't have to see this violence. We work very diligently, as quickly as possible, to remove the remains from a public space. But we're also striving to collect the best evidence, and we don't want to jeopardize justice for Brian, to speed things up. So we do work as quickly as possible to make that happen. Sometimes these things do occur in the public domain. Sometimes they're in private space, and we have more latitude. But that's something we're always working on. Chief, is something you want to mention on it?
Just briefly to add to the Major's response and to address your question, we're very aware of the sensitivities that we need to and we do consider when it comes to a victim in the public view. We need, like the Major said, there's the investigative integrity. There's certain things we need to do with the crime scene, but there are also certain considerations that this entire country has particularly been on heightened alert about, particularly since 2014. What do we do to not create a provocative scenario? We take into consideration the neighborhood, in this case, the shopping center, passerbyers, folks who would be further traumatized by seeing that, to include police officers, but citizens and other community members as well. So rest assured that we take that very seriously, and that was a conversation that I recall having at the scene on May the 7th. So we're very attuned to the necessity to apply both discretion and sensitivities.
Do you at this point have, may another person be involved in this shooting? Or those are the only two suspects you have?
At this point, only 2 suspects. We don't anticipate additional charges. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And that concludes today's press conference. Have a good day.